I think what we'd like to do is maybe just rearrange things a little bit. I'd love to get we got our speaker Peter McPhee, who's going to give us some information on the on ANZAC Day. And I know we're a bit early, but this was our plan originally at this meeting. So I think without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Peter McPhee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Worshipful Master. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows over a freshly mown field, a balding Australian school teacher started to walk home, and he was heard to mutter, "Don't worry, boys, I'll be back in the morning." Now, who was this man and what did he know? Australia at the time had a population of around 4 million in 1914, and 10%, or about 420,000, were wearing a uniform. 330,000 of these went overseas. When you take out the elderly, the children and females, we're left with about a third of the population fighting for king and country. Of that 330,000, 1 in 5 were killed, 2 in 5 were wounded, 150,000. The other 2 apparently remained home unscathed. My Uncle Jack was one of those apparently unaffected. He was known around Omeo as Three-Fingered Jack, and lived the rest of his life as a hermit on the family farm at Pienaar. But of those killed, 1/3 or 20,000 had no known grave. And when you travel through the battlefields of Belgium, you come across the war cemeteries, often only 100 metres apart, each with either 10, 20, 50, 100 or 1,000 graves. The original cemeteries were the sites of the casualty clearing stations, and the graves were made haphazardly, laid just outside the casualty tents and stations. Later, the bodies were collected and memorials given and laid out in neat graves. Those not recovered were listed on memorials in their hometown or in major sites overseas, like the Tynecoat Cemetery, with 12,000 graves and 34,000 names, or the Menin Gate, that some of you may have been to, with 55,000 allied names on it. Some of these cemeteries are dotted along the fighting lines. Some were lucky to have a close mate or a brother nearby with them when they were killed. My uncle was killed on the 10th of April 1918, and he served with his brother Jim, who arranged for his body to be taken back from the front line and buried in a small civilian cemetery at Kruon. His body was thus saved from constantly blowing up as the constant shelling and bombing took place. Now, following the failure of the Gallipoli Peninsula, our forces withdrew and returned to Egypt for training. Some went to England and the others France. In July 1916, the Battle of the Somme began. The English had been fighting in France and Belgium since the declaration of the war in September 1914. The late afternoon of the 19th of July 1916, soldiers of the 5th Australian Division, together with the British 61st Division, assaulted a heavily fortified German line near Auberidge in Flanders. The Australians had only recently arrived in France and were undergoing acclimatisation in the trenches in what was known as the nursery sector near Amiens. The attack was intended as a feint to hold the German reserves from moving south to the Somme, where a large Allied offensive had begun 2 weeks earlier. But it was a disastrous failure. The Australian and British soldiers assaulted over 400 metres of open ground in broad daylight and under direct observation and heavy fire from the entrenched German machine guns. In that 24-hour period, 5,533 Allied casualties occurred. Almost 2,000 of the Australians were killed in action or died of wounds, and some 400 were taken prisoner. The greatest loss by a single division in the 24 hours and Australia's greatest military disaster was that day on the 16th of July. The Australians attacked in the late afternoon, just 2.5 hours of daylight was left when they went over the top, heavily laden with scaling ladders, pickets, shovels, and a bag of grenades. Almost immediately, they came under the heavy crisscross fire of the German battalions. Sergeant Jimmy Dowling of the 57th Battalion recalled hundreds were mown down in the flick of an eyelid, like great rows of teeth being knocked out from a comb. Men were cut down by streams of bullets, and it was all over in 5 minutes. The 15th Brigade from Victoria was destroyed within 15 minutes, with entire companies of infantry being annihilated. Their brigadier, General Pompey Elliott, was speechless with grief the following day. It's recorded that he had tears streaming down his face and his hands shook the remaining survivors. The night of the loss, he was in his tent being guarded by his regimental sergeant major, who reported that the general was weeping at the loss of his men. Believe the loss and the subsequent inaction by the British and Australian governments led to his suicide in 1931. And indeed, many of his diggers refused to believe that he had actually committed suicide. One of Pompey Elliott's battalions, the 60th, had gone into the attack with 887 officers and men. When the survivors gathered at parade headquarters the following afternoon, only one officer and 106 men answered the roll call. 12 hours after the state of the battle, some units began to retire under cover of darkness at about 4 a.m, while the others pulled back in broad daylight and suffered heavy casualties. But as the daylight approached, these Australians who could were forced to fall back. Wounded men began to crawl back during the night, while others still lay in no man's land calling for help. By dawn on the morning of the 20th, the Australian trenches were packed with wounded and dying men. Hundreds more were wounded who still lay in no man's field. The next 3 days and nights, Australians risked death or wounds to go and bring these men back in an attempt to retrieve their mates. A brief truce was called in one sector to allow this to happen, and 2 Germans allowed the Australians to carry their wounded. In fact, 2 German soldiers carried a wounded digger back to the parapet of the Australian trenches, saluted and then walked away. They were then shot by Australian soldiers in the next trench, unaware of the action they just carried out. Some wounded men remained in no man's land for up to a week, scavenged for food and water from the dead, hiding by day and crawling by night until at last they reached their own lines. For over 90 years, 1,333 Australian soldiers remained missing from the Battle of Fromelles with no known graves. Following his first visit to Fromelles, the balding teacher was to spend the next 8 years in a quest against multiple government departments in 3 countries to keep his promise to return. A promise based on his belief that hundreds nearby to Fromelles and Pheasant Wood were around, and at least 250 Australian and British servicemen were somewhere there as a result of that disastrous battle. Yet little is known of the battle and the carnage that ensued. Casualties are a certainty in war. Gallipoli, our most revered campaign, and the only time Australia's invaded another country, resulted in the loss of 8,709 men over an 8-month period, and we retired defeated. Yet at Fromelles, in a 24-hour period, we lost 5,533 casualties. Very few of the Australians know of the Battle of Fromelles, yet on the 19th of July 1916, not 7 months after Gallipoli, it was our worst military disaster. The attack on the 19th and 20th of July was designed as a feint or a diversion from the main battle of the Somme, some 64 kilometres away. The battle plan was drawn up by Lieutenant General Hacking, a British commander, who had previously suffered great losses at Lewes, Alba Ridge and Boar Head. Lieutenant General Hacking, who had directed the operation, reported, "I think the attack, although it failed, has done both divisions a lot of good." The original order was to take place on the 16th, but it was deferred due to the weather. The Australians were to face their first battle in Europe with raw recruits as reinforcements who had no training added to the Gallipoli veterans. The object of the battle was to obtain the high ground on the Sugarloaf salient. Prior to the battle, General Staff Officer was taken by our Australian Commander, Pompey Elliott, past the front line to no man's land to inspect the site. He went back to Hacking and recommended cancellation because it would be a disastrous failure and result in tremendous casualties. To the disgust of the Australians, the battle was described by the English as a short, sharp incident. While probably not intended to do so, this statement totally misled the General Headquarters as well as those at home. 80% of the 5th Division and 70% of the Allied forces were listed as casualties. 7,000 men attacked, and as I've said, 5,533 were suffered casualties, including 25 sets of brothers and 2 father and sons. It is probably no doubt that as a result of these number of casualties, that General Hacking was known to his troops as Butcher Hacking. Little is known of the course of the 20th century. History could have been changed forever had an Australian sniper shot a German runner from the 16th Bavarian Reserve Infantry Battalion, a runner who would later change history, Lance Corporal Adolf Hitler. It's a pity our snipers didn't find him. A large military cemetery exists at Freemasons as a result of the battle, and a sergeant from Seymour was bravely bringing wounded soldiers back to no man's land when he heard a voice, "Don't forget me, copper." That sergeant's now memorialised in VC Corner, where a statue to Sergeant Simon Fraser stands, showing him bringing a wounded man back to safety and medical attention. And it's known as the Cobber's statue. But after the major battle, there was a move by the Australians to collect the wounded and bury the dead. British General Command denied this request. And after the retreat of the Australians, the Germans took all the bodies and buried them in large pits they had dug. To leave the dead where they fell would have caused major health and disease problems. All Allied dead were buried in 3 pits, along with the letter E attached to them, being English. The existence of these pits was not known to Australian or Allied authorities. When the truce was declared, they were left lying where they fell, and it is known that the Germans had pulled out of the area within a week of the battle. And due to the advanced decomposition, the dead were buried, the Australians buried most of their men in 10 mass graves of 41 bodies each. And this is the current from the main Fromelles cemetery, with 2 stone crosses placed on the ground and the names listed on the memorial wall. But after our teacher's first trip in 1996, and his curiosity was aroused on subsequent trips, it increased his intrigue at the lack of individual tombstones. In 2002, the teacher from Northcote High School, Lambros, Ingelos, went back and pondered the names on the walls and number of graves. He compared the numbers with casualty lists and they didn't add up. Went home and continued his research, which confirmed his thoughts. There were 1,299 names on the wall. Later, he was to check every one of these names against records available in order to prove his belief that we still had a number of diggers missing somewhere. He was delighted at the encyclopedic knowledge of many locals had of our troop movements and the battle lines in the area. He was amazed at the amount of war relics remaining on the ground after such a time. Although he still had a nagging thought, how many were missing and where were they? Was it 200, 500, 600? He didn't know. Eventually, his research convinced him it was only 200, about 250. One of his researchers showed that Private Bill Barry, who was taken prisoner and rendered unconscious by a shell blast, recalling that he came out of unconsciousness and being in a pit about 40 feet deep, 20 feet wide, and 15 feet long. Everyone else in the pit was dead. He was obviously in one of those 3 pits. Another piece of the puzzle was solved when a photograph of the railway was sent to Lambros. He was aware that Hacking had used aerial photos in his planned attack, but other researchers, both professional and amateurs, as well provided many additional clues to the location and existence of the pits, despite the denials from authorities that they existed. It must be remembered, brethren, that 1.3 million French and 2 million Germans and 500,000 Allied soldiers died during the war. In proving his case, Lambros had to fight the Australian Defence Department, British Ministry of Defence, Australian Army Historical Unit, the War Graves Commission on 2 continents, Senate committees and panel after panel of investigative reports. Apart from numerous referrals from friends and acquaintances, he received assistance from an organisation called Rome, Recovery of Australians Missing. Eventually he went public and received support, especially from the families of those missing, seeking answers. Fortunately, an article by historian Jonathan King was published in The Australian, and 60 Minutes did a story on his search. Putting all the jigsaw pieces together not only proved the existence of the pits, but also their location. Once the existence and location was determined, what was next? We mark the site as a war grave, or exhume and rebury, or just leave it. Various approvals were required. Fortunately, owners of the land, Monsieur and Madame de Mazet, were quick to agree, as 2 of Madame de Mazet's uncles were killed during the war and 1 was still missing. They commented that the section of land where the pits were was never any good for crop production due to reasons they weren't aware of. The bodies had laid buried in heavy clay for 90 years in an area of high water table and drainage problems. Once the authorities agreed to dig the site and exhume any remains, a team of experts was assembled. This would include a mortuary manager to ensure proper care of the remains, a scene of crimes officer, forensic photographer, forensic radiographer, archaeologists and anthropologists. Of course, an army demolition expert was required for the many munitions that they found as they were doing their digging. Indeed, French farmers find around 250 tonnes of unspent munitions a year. Some of them place them at the front gate and then just ring the army and say, come and get it and get rid of it. A compound was set up around the site to ensure security and dignity for any of the remains found. Once the exhumation remains, they were booked in, given primary radiography surveys, and cleaned by a team of 6 led by the mortuary manager. It was here that a lot of the relics of the mementos were found: badges, pipes, even a return train ticket from Perth to Fremantle, tucked into a gas mask. After radiography, all remains were dried and placed in storage for burial. In 17 weeks, 250 remains were found in the pits. But now that they'd recovered the bodies, what was the next step? Attempts to identify them commenced. 3 categories were selected for the remains. Let's identify them by name and army. We don't know the name, let's identify them by the name only, the army only, or unidentified. Contact was made with any descendants of the 57th and 60th Battalions, and then they were invited to submit DNA samples for comparison. Currently, of the 250 bodies, only 84 remain unnamed. Whether named or not, each digger was given his own funeral with full military honours. I was fortunate to be present at the 2010 on the anniversary of that battle on the 19th of July, when the last body was buried in the presence of dignitaries from 3 countries, and of course 6,000 others who paid homage to their country's war dead. And a new war cemetery was dedicated, the first in over 60 years. When Lambros, the balding teacher, returned later, he brought with him satisfaction to many Allied families on the fate of their loved ones. Of the 250 bodies, 161 have been identified as Australians, and he had a belief in his conviction. Brethren, you've got a belief in Freemasonry. I'd urge you to pursue your belief the same way that Lambros did in his search for those missing soldiers. and you do a great service to the ex-servicemen by your vacant chair ceremony, and last year when you invited me to attend the burial of the unknown soldier. Thank you.
Peter, thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. Certainly brings home the horrors of war, and I think the more we can disseminate this sort of information, I guess the less likely people are to insist or committing these sort of soldiers and innocent people to these sort of atrocities. I also want to thank you, Peter, for bringing the plight of Lambros to our attention, because he certainly was a man of a very resilient man of high fortitude or significant fortitude, and I think these sort of characteristics, if we can embody even a part of that in our daily lives, I think we'll be paying our diggers a huge tribute. Again, thank you very much, Peter. I welcome you to hang around if you'd like to, as we move to other items on our agenda.
Some of the people are going to stand at the front of their property and recite the ode or something on ANZAC Day. I've got 50 poppies about 400 millimetres, I was going to say 400 metres, 400 mils wide, if anyone wants to get one and put it on their front post, doorpost, gatepost, fence. They're available locally here in Mitcham.
Certainly appreciate that, Peter. Can you let us know how we would contact you? Is that via David or?
Yeah, via David. He's got my numbers. Yeah, he buys me cars because he says I've got to get a good one because I'm the poor bugger that's got to service it.
Fair enough. Brethren, you might have heard that if you need to contact Peter, you can do it through David Murray, if you need any more information. But again, thank you very much, Peter. We really do appreciate you stepping up and supporting us during this time.
Anytime, Master. I'll leave the meeting now and go and have dinner, if that's all right.
No problem at all. You certainly have our leave to do so. Again, thank you very much for your efforts.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Brethren, I just see that Ruben has joined us. Ruben, are you there? Can you hear me? No? Okay. Sorry, brethren, I was expecting a colleague or a contact of mine that I made when I was in the UK, Ruben. And I'm not sure if that's actually Ruben that's joined us now. I know I was expecting him to join us earlier on, but he might have had a few difficulties in getting on. Brethren, we'll move across to our next presentation, which is the meeting a member or getting to know a member or a brother, and we've got two from Max and from Ron. I won't pick which one goes first, but let's see who pipes up first.
From Ron or Matt and Max. Who's going to be first?
I can be first. That's fine.
There you go.
Excellent, Max. Good on you.
I haven't really prepared too much, but I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, and then why I joined Freemasonry and the journey so far. And then I don't know if Sid or Matt have any questions you'd like to ask me to prompt, then I can go on that too. So yeah, my name's Max. I grew up in the country in Gippsland and moved down to the city when I was 18. After finishing high school, moved down to study and moved into Box Hill, about 200 metres away from the Richmond Lodge, and was every day driving past the lodge and sort of piqued my interest a little bit. What is Freemasonry? What goes on there? I'd heard all the rumours that I'm sure everybody's heard along the track as well, and decided to speak to my father about it. And I'd never really understood before, but Dad is actually a Freemason, His mother lodge is Walhalla Lodge down here in Gippsland as well. And he's also a member in Portugal, and I'm not sure what their lodge is called. So that was good. He could give me, a little bit more information on Freemasonry, and we had a few discussions. And I also found out I had uncles, and my grandfather is also Freemason. So sort of, just from asking the question, I found out that the whole connection through my family. So I joined Richmond Lodge. I started coming to the south in December 2017, and then did my first degree in May 2018. And since then, I've learned a lot, met a lot of great people, and really enjoyed my time. So I don't know if that's enough, or you'd like to know some more. Feel free to ask any questions.
Thanks, Max. I really do appreciate the short and sweet version. Max, I just wanted to ask you. Now that you mentioned that your dad was a Freemason, or is a Freemason, and you got uncles and grandfather as well.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you that being a Freemason, obviously the legacy of your family in this as well?
It's a deep question. I probably wasn't prepared for, but I think.
Sorry, Max.
Okay, I think the best thing about Freemasonry for me so far has been the camaraderie, and that people obviously I'm a little bit younger than a lot of the members, and there's people from all different walks of life, but you can, as soon as you enter the lodge and sit down in the south, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what age you are, what you've done in your life. Everybody's on the level playing field, and just likes to actually invest some time and learn about the other people that's around them. So I think that's a really good quality about Freemasonry, that you're always welcome, and people do genuinely care about who you are, where you come from, and how you're doing as well.
Thanks, Max. I'll open it up to anyone else that has any questions.
Pretty quiet. I must have covered off everything.
I think you have, Max. No news is always good news, so or silence is taken as consent. No, I certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Max. We'll move along to Ron now. That's right.
Right. Thanks very much indeed. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me
Sorry,
okay?
Ron. It's Ron Pienaar. Sorry.
Oh, not this Ron, the other Ron.
Other Ron. Sorry about that. I'll be more specific in future.
Oh, very good.
That's okay. Just a clarification. Ron Cameron will be doing meet a member in May.
Excellent.
Next month. Yeah.
Thanks, Ron.
You're welcome to swap, Ron.
Excellent, mate.
Good. Well, my joining Richmond Lodge was due to Ron Cameron, because when I was looking for a lodge when I came to Melbourne that time, I went on the website and I got Ron's telephone number, and he drove up all the way from the area he stayed in, and we met at Matt's house the evening. So this Ron is due to that Ron. Basically, I was born in South Africa. I'm the 10th generation of a French Huguenot that came to Africa in 1867, and our family history is taken up in 3 volumes of the Pienaar Register recorded by the French Huguenots. So I eventually I was tracking down my genealogy, and then after many years, then I found that they'd actually published this the series on the Pienaar family, and then got hold of it. It was published. This is the latest published. It was in 2016, and I'm the 10th generation direct descendant of Jacques Pienaar, who came from France. My father was a policeman, so he retired after 32 years of service as a colonel. So we moved often because every time we got promotion, we would move to a different city in South Africa. So I had a good tour of the country. I was then conscripted to the police, and then ended up as a sky marshal with South African Airways, and got to see the world for a couple of years. And then after that, I was transferred to military intelligence, where I served a stint as a cryptographer. That stint was almost broken short by the famous Pretoria bomb in 1983, which killed 19 people. And I was one of the people in the very near facility. I was six car lengths away from the bomb when it went off, but I was fortunately just at the right position not to get injured. I studied psychology through the police. At that stage, you could study while you were in the police force, and they paid for it. So I studied and qualified as a psychologist. Left the police eventually, went into business. Met my wife in Cape Town in 1990. We got married in 92. Have a daughter. We moved to London, and then we went back to South Africa, and then we moved to Australia down in 2009. First started out in Mackay, then moved down to Sydney, and then eventually down to Melbourne. So I'm registered as a psychotherapist and hypnotherapist in Australia, but most of my time I spend doing project finance and project management in Australia and the US. Currently, it's very quiet because of COVID, so I'm enjoying a lot of time at home, which I normally don't enjoy. Or don't have the privilege of doing. My daughter works as a scientist. She works for pathology labs, and my wife is an accountant. My introduction to the craft came back in 2005 when I was working with an aviation company, and I met a guy by the name of Trevor Merton. And we got to talking about all different things, and I liked his style, and I liked what he was standing, what he meant, and his values. And it came to being that he was a member of the craft. And Trevor actually introduced me. He was master up in Mittagong, just north of Sydney, for a while. And his dad also, his father passed away probably about 3 years ago. He was very well known in Melbourne, and I think he was a 30 or 32nd degree. He was Howard Merton. Anyway, then when I started digging in the family, because none of my immediate relatives are Masons, then my wife's grandfather was a Mason, and I actually inherited his regalia suitcase. The little suitcase I carry my stuff around in is actually my wife's grandfather's. And then also my mother's uncle was back in the 70s. I once saw a photo of him in the Grand Lodge regalia, and he was in South Africa. So he was something, but nobody in those years, you never spoke about. This is very secretive. And the fact that he had a photo was something that you seldom saw. But so I tracked that. I had some lodge in the family somewhere, but never spoken of, never mentioned. From a hobby point of view, basically, when I'm not working, my wife basically workaholics, I suppose, but we love scuba diving and we like music. So we make music seldom now at the moment, but when we also get the chance where we get into the water.
Excellent, Ron. Thank you very much for that. God, it's quite a varied and interesting career. Now that you've volunteered your music abilities, I think we could possibly have you on one of our calls with a good old South African tune, I would assume. Is that right?
Whatever, yeah.
No, certainly that was brilliant, Ron. Your daughter, is she in Australia as well now?
Yes, my daughter is up in Brisbane. She moved with us in 2009. She finished school. Yeah, she was then in grade 11. So she finished school. Then she did a double degree in chemistry and biochemistry, and then she did a master's in forensics.
Okay, and she
moved to Brisbane last year.
Okay, and your introduction to Freemasonry was basically in Australia.
Yes. Well, it was through Trevor, because I mean, Trevor got me interested in this lot back in 2005 in South Africa. And when I moved here, then he said, "Well, you know, we've got to start talking." And I spent quite a few hours. I used to go visit him quite frequently, and just spend weekends with him. And then through him and his dad, got me interested in the craft, and so that's how I joined.
Excellent. I'll open it to brethren that want to ask ask Ron Pienaar any questions.
Well, those were easy ones. I could answer them all.
I'll just make this comment. That's Ron Cameron. Ron, you were a most, how can I put it?
Sorry, Ron. Ron Pienaar has dropped off.
Oh, well, he's gone. Okay.
But hold your question until he gets back.
Okay.
I'm sure he'll join us. There you go. He's back. I think he's back on now.
Back on
Ron
now?
Pienaar, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I pressed the wrong button. I pressed mute and I pressed the big button. Sorry about that.
Just saying, Ron, that when we first met, you were a most interesting person to meet. And it was my pleasure to, sort of follow up and make sure that you felt a very warm welcome as far as Richmond was concerned. You tend to forget some of these things sometimes, the opportunities that you have to talk about the craft and what it means to belong. And certainly, as far as your story is concerned, belonging to Freemasonry has obviously been quite a journey, and something that you really value. And I guess part of my story is that too, that not tonight, another night. But great, Ron. Wonderful.
Thank you.
I must admit that, Ron, you are the second South African that Ron Cameron has managed to pull into Richmond Lodge. I would be the first one, I think.
Well, you said you are special.
Thank you, Ron. I was the guinea pig, was I?
Well, you are more than that. Well, it's another story, but I will just simply say this, that I had a sort of a leading role in the scheme of things with the Global Fraternal Network, which emanated out of New York, actually, in America, and spread around the world. And as far as Australia was concerned, and I was called on to organise a gathering of the brethren from around Australia, and it was through that I got to meet Sid, because of course Sid became involved, and he came and he enjoyed the company of others, but it was a Grand Master, now passed on, John Humphreys, that most would know, especially the older brethren, a very warm-hearted, humble man. And it was John Humphreys that really took Sid under his wing and made that weekend a very special occasion. But that's a story for another time, Sid.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Ron.
Okay.
Brethren, I've my good friend Ruben Wyatt has joined us. Good day, Ruben. Ruben, we can't hear you, so I'm not sure if your mic's on or plugged in.
Maybe Robin could say a couple of words. Robin's joined us from Ruben's Lodge. Robin Tudor.
Oh, okay.
He was eating breakfast a few moments ago, but Robin, are you able to unmute? Maybe not.
Okay. Well, brethren, I'll give you, since poor Ruben is having a few difficulties. Sorry, I can't read what he's saying on that.
I think he's saying his mic isn't working, but if I could give you a hint, Ruben, if you, at the bottom of your window, if you can see the three dots on the right-hand side, if you click that and go to settings, you might be able to pick your microphone and speakers. It might be the wrong one that you've got set.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can.
You can. Well done.
Is that Robin?
Yes.
Robin, welcome.
I was speaking to Ruben last night. In fact, I was spoken to him this morning, so I know he's about. Both of us are from UK. I live in a small town called Dursley, which is about 100 miles west of London in the country. I've been in Freemasonry 40 years last November. A long time, isn't it?
It is a long time.
Yeah, and I'm in the present charity steward and also almoner. I feel quite privileged that you've asked me to join you, but it seems that there are people around the world joining you as well. So that is what Freemasonry is all about, really. I don't think I've got anything more to add to that, really. I hadn't thought of anything to say, so I will ring Ruben and get him to try and press the right button so that he can come through to you. That'd be all right.
No, that'll be fine. And Robin, thank you very much for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure and privilege to have yourself and Ruben. I know Ruben is there. He just can't communicate with us, but I'm sure he can hear us.
I'll get on the phone to him now and tell him to press the right button.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Where's my phone? Oh, here we are. Oh, great.
I'm just wondering, Sid, whether we should do a round of welcome to Richmond Lodge.
I suppose we could, but I mean, without music, I think we're going to sound terrible, right, Matt?
They mentioned to me that if you're on chat, if you're on the phone and you want to unmute, it's *6. So anyone that's on the phone, *6 will unmute you.
Do you want me to try and connect? I'll go back on and I'll put my phone next so that you can speak to them then. How's that, Ruben?
No, it's okay. No. I'm going to try and sort it. I can hear them, and it says my microphone's on as well, but for some reason it's not. I don't know why. I'm just.
You realise?
a hell of a job getting in.
Do you realise, Ruben, that I've got the mobile phone next to my laptop, and that is being communicated direct to Australia, and they can hear every word you're saying.
The wonders of technology, Ruben.
Good morning. I should be saying good evening to everybody. Good evening, Worship Master. All I can say is I can see you, I can hear you, but for some reason my microphone doesn't seem to be working, although it does say it's switched on. So I don't know why that is. I'm just going to have to investigate. But please carry on, and I'm enjoying listening to all these stories about Freemasonry. So good evening to you. So you carry on, please do.
I think I've done my bit really as a translator or whatever it is, converting my mobile phone. So I'm going to let Ruben get off the line now and hope he gets in touch.
Robin, I think you're called a switchboard.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I'm the agent lucky to get in touch with you on a bloody thing, let alone get in touch with a mobile phone and then Ruben and then put it through to you. I think that's magic.
Yes, the wonders of technology. Brethren, with Ruben unable to talk to us at this stage, I'll give a quick introduction. I was very fortunate to connect with Ruben when I visited the UK late last year. And he was kind enough to extend an invite and take me along to a meeting. And that's after much trialing as to which one I can make and which one I can't make it to. But I must admit, I had a fantastic time. And I want to say again, thank you very much, Ruben, for all your efforts. But I had a brilliant time. And in fact, we caught up thereafter just on our own and had a bit of a chat. And unfortunately, I had to run off that evening because I had another function to go to. Ruben has promised me that he will visit me in Australia. And we're looking forward when he does that to bring him along to one of our lodge meetings. Is that a thumbs up, Ruben?
Can you hear it?
No, we can't, but I can see the thumbs up.
Can you? I'm just watching at the moment. I put my mobile phone away and I'm going to leave it to Ruben to get in touch.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you very much. Matt, what's next on the list?
That's the open part of the meeting. We did have some business which we're planning on doing, more members stuff, but that's it really for the open meeting that we've got planned for tonight. I guess we've recorded tonight. I'll have a look at it, see if it makes sense. If it does, we'll put it up on the YouTube channel. We're doing this every Tuesday night at 7 p.m, so come back next week. If you've had problems connecting, we'll put out an email and we'll set up a time where people can do some testing and work stuff out. Testing.
Here he is, it's Ruben.
Oh, no, you got me. Sorry.
You're on.
I do apologise. Sorry, I interrupted somebody there. Whoever was talking, please carry on.
Ruben, it was only the secretary. He talks all the time.
You carry on.
Okay, right. Good evening, Worshipful Master. I did say that earlier, but you couldn't hear me. And good evening to everybody at Richmond Lodge. It's a pleasure to join you. As you see, I've got a friend of mine, Robin Tudor, come along as well. Robin Tudor, he probably told you, is in St John's Lodge, which meets in Dursley in the province of Gloucestershire. That is my mother lodge, and I'm also a member of a lodge in Stroud, which is about 10 miles from Dursley. That's Old Marlingtonian Lodge. That was the lodge which I think Sid wanted to come along to, your Worshipful Master wanted to come along to, unable to come along to that one. And I actually invited him along to Sherborne Lodge. You may remember that, Worshipful Master. I
certainly do. Absolutely, Ruben.
And as you say, it was a tremendous evening. We had a great evening, and well, that's all I can say. Really, we had a great evening, and it was interesting to hear some of the facts that you told us about the things that go on in Australia. So anyway, there you go. So I've been in Masonry now about, I think something like about 10 years now. So quite young compared to some, but I do thoroughly enjoy it. And one day I will jump on a plane, and when we're out of this lockdown, that is, and hopefully come down to the Melbourne and see you all. Thank you.
That's brilliant, Ruben, and we certainly do look forward to it.
Can Ruben hear me over the? Can Ruben hear me? Can he?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
It's unbelievable that we're contacting. We're only 12 miles apart. Yet we're having to go to Australia to speak to you. Things must be getting bad. I'm going to say over and out.
Thanks, Robin. Just out of interest, Robin and Ruben, are your lodges operating on a virtual level as well, or is that not really taken off in the UK?
Not really. Well, we're on lockdown, as you know. Grand Lodge has suggested that it's not the best thing to do to have virtual meetings, but we can do, provided we don't do any of the signs, tokens, or words, or give anything away that we shouldn't give away. Having said that, St John's Lodge, which is my mother lodge, as I said, with Robin, we are having a virtual meeting on. We're trying out for the first time on Thursday evening, which you'd be most welcome to join, of course, but it would mean you'd probably have to get up about 4 o'clock in the morning.
I think we might give that a miss. Thanks, Robin.
Well, there you go. Yeah, Robin, if you wanted to say anything.
I'm usually up at that time, 4 o'clock in the morning.
There you go.
Yep. Send the details and I'll join in.
I can email I'll email the details to your Worshipful Master, to Sid, and I'm sure he can pass the details on.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds fun.
Perfect, Ruben. I can certainly do that. I think I've also sent you guys the link for the Endeavour Lodge, which is under the Grand Lodge of Victoria. They do meet once a month, and they actually have a proper meeting. So it'll be good. It'll be good if you guys can join that, and I'll send the information for the next meeting, which will be, I think it's the 4th Tuesday in May. Sorry, in April.
Just a point of interest there. I will be hosting the meeting on Thursday at St John's. It starts at 8:30 p.m. UK time, and we operate on the Zoom app. Does that mean anything to anybody? Zoom?
Yep.
Yes, it does.
Okay, that's the detail. I'll send those details anyway.
That'll be perfect. Thanks, Ruben.
Okay.
Sid, just on the Endeavour Virtual,
Yep.
they are planning. So normally they meet, I think, only 5 times a year. They do the fifth Friday, or the whichever. I haven't got my head around that yet. But they are doing an emergency meeting on Thursday, the 30th.
Okay.
Of April.
Thursday the 30th. Perfect.
I know that they've planned to do plenty of emergency meetings while we're all locked up.
and that'll be that'll be very much welcomed, I can assure you. Thanks, Jay.
I was having it's Matt here. I was having a chat to Jay earlier today, and we've sort of been collecting some online bits and pieces of information. And just for a short time, we might get Masons Connect back up and put some content on there about where everyone's meeting online. We'll get that up in the next couple of days, and it's just a place where people can share stuff until it's more public with Freemasonry Vic. But I'll get you onto there tomorrow, Jay, so that you can be sharing.
Brilliant.
Jack Doolan, you've joined us. How have you enjoyed tonight?
Hey, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
How have you enjoyed tonight?
Hi. Yeah, it was good. It was pretty interesting. I really liked the bit of the start. Sorry, that's just my dog.
What sort of dog you got?
Can you hear him?
Yes, we can.
I suppose he's very effective then.
What sort of dog is it?
It's an American Staffordshire Terrier.
Ah, cool.
So he's got a rather imposing bark, but he'd be a terrible guard dog. Any intruder would be warmly welcomed into the house with lots of licks and kisses and that sort of stuff. So it'd be a terrible dog.
So his bark is definitely worse than his bite.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he wouldn't even know how to bite. One time I decided to test him, right? So I came in through the back door in a motorbike helmet and a jacket that I'd never worn before. And I snuck in through the backyard. And he's looking at me, he's barking, and I'm like, oh. And he jumped right up and he's licking and playing and everything. So, yeah, I don't think it'd be any good.
Matt has a golden retriever.
Yeah, I love golden retrievers. They're lovely.
I was going to say he's just as bad. You come to the front door, he'll bark at you, but as soon as you see him, he'll lick you to death.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing though.
They're good.
Because if they bark loud enough, then anyone who's coming in will probably think twice.
Yeah.
I don't want to clean it up anyway if he does get to him, so that's always good. Because I'm sure if he did bite someone, he could probably do a fair bit of damage. But yeah. Anyway.
Jack, thanks for joining us. Have you joined some of our other functions so far, or was this the first one?
Yeah, I went to one in Box Hill, I think in January, and then in February I had a few commitments with work and university, so I wasn't able to attend anything. And then COVID-19 came along and kind of impaired my progress with the masonry a little bit. So just do what we can online, I guess, until things proceed as normal. But yeah, I think we just got to adapt to it,
Yeah. Thanks for joining us again tonight. It's absolutely awesome that you've popped in. Andrew hasn't joined us tonight. He's been doing some of the friends meetings that we've had, and I guess he's actually decided to join the lodge. So it's going to take time before we can officially do that, but we're certainly doing this every Tuesday night You don't have to come along every Tuesday night, but it's certainly an opportunity to sort of do what we've done tonight, or just to connect with the members. So please feel more than welcome. I'll make sure you're on the email.
Thank you. Yeah, I will. I definitely will. Yeah. It's pretty good to if you're stuck at home all day, right? So any time you can sort of socialize in any capacity is pretty good, right?
Definitely. It's stir crazy at the moment.
Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
And Jack, you basically hit the nail on the head by that. I mean, this is part of the reason that Matt, has orchestrated this whole thing and put it together. And it's more just to maintain that level of human contact, which we all are distressed about at the moment. But at least meeting online like this is fantastic. And then you can meet people like Ruben and Robin halfway around the world. It's even better.
Yeah.
Can I just interrupt there? Are you on much of a lockdown in Australia?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, full on.
Ruben, I'd say yes, we are. But I don't think we're as bad as you guys. A lot of our shopping centers are still open and shops are still open. There are a few that are closed. We now have toilet paper on the shelf, so we can certainly send some to you if you'd like. But I've been comparing with my parents across the ditch over in New Zealand, and they are far more. They're at lockdown level 4, if that means anything. We were only at level 3 in Victoria. But one encouraging sign is that the number of new infections has dropped off significantly. So I think we were about 10 or 12 as of yesterday.
I did that there was something came on my phone this morning. A little the news comes up on my phone to say that the government in the UK will be looking at it later this week if they can ease restrictions slightly. I suppose we're on full at the moment, but yesterday there was about 700 people passed away, whereas previous days it's been up in 900. So maybe there's a signs that things are improving.
I must admit, Ruben, I'm really surprised that the UK government, with the number of infections that you guys have and deaths, that they're actually talking about possibly easing. Although ours are so low, there's no way we're going to be easing anything until for the next, at least until the end of May. So. And they say, this is very much a moving target. So there's no way they're going to commit to any easing of any of the restrictions at this stage.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if it's a bit of media hype or a bit of political hype.
I don't know whether that's on my phone this morning.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Hey, Ruben, it could be that it's going to get worse.
Say again.
I said it could mean that it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
I think it's the optimist in you that's thinking it's going to ease up.
Even if they release the restrictions, I don't think I'd go outside. I don't think I would get back into it. I'd probably still work from home. Even if they
very
all sorts of stuff, I don't think I would. Yeah.
Is anyone else on the call that hasn't had a chance to say hello? I know if you're on the phone, *6 will get you back unmuted if you become muted. Is that Bob there? Number 26? Maybe not.
Matt, Bob is private number.
No, private number. Private caller. No.
Yeah, Bob is private caller, sorry.
Okay.
There's someone whose number ends in 26. Do we know who that is? They're also muted. So if you need to unmute, it's is it *6 you say?
*6, yep. Yeah, Jay worked that one out. Hey, we've had a few people drop off, including Russell, which is a shame we didn't get the chance to say hello to him as well.
It's Keith here. Bob, it's *6.
Oh, Keith.
Yes. I'm sorry, I've been listening, but I didn't know I had to do the *6.
Oh, well done.
Well, welcome, Keith.
Bob Anderson here. I can hear you all right. I did *6. Could you hear me now?
Absolutely.
Certainly.
Good on you, Bob.
Absolutely. Great to hear you.
I'm still here.
No doubt. All right, Matt, is there anything else that we need to cover off?
We've had a long meeting. We can have a planning meeting next week if we like, I think. I think it's been fantastic. It's great to catch up with everyone.
No, I agree. I think we'll have a planning meeting next week after the initial sort of connections that we make.
We did have some way. We do have a dispensation, but it's still getting confirmation about what we can vote on and what we can't vote on. So let's wait until we can officially do that, I guess.
Yep. Unfortunately, Victor hasn't joined us, and I don't know if he will, but Victor, as most of them would know, is moving to New South Wales. So unfortunately, we're losing him, but hopefully at some point we can say, a good or farewell to him. I don't know if he'll join us at any time.
Victor will be in Melbourne for another couple of months. He was to move earlier, but he will be in Melbourne for another couple of months. And whilst he settles in where he moves, he'll still be a member of Richmond Lodge. So he's going to be with us for a little bit longer. Unfortunately, he didn't join us tonight. I have been in touch with Victor. He's doing really well.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. Brethren, if there's nothing else, I'll bring this meeting to a close and say, firstly, thank you for everyone for joining, and appreciated your company, and hopefully you enjoyed hanging out with us.
Thank you, Steve.
Absolute pleasure, first of all, Master. And I wish you all over there in Australia the best of health, and hope everything gets back to normal as soon as possible. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Ruben, and equally as well, we wish you guys all the best in the UK. I know it's a bit tougher for you than what we have in over here, but hopefully we can stay in contact and you can connect with us on a regular basis as well.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks, Virtual Master and Matt. Signing out, Bob Anson.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Keith M saying good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Keith. Good night.
Good night, Keith.
Good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ron. Cheers.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody. Good to talk to you all again.
Jay,
See you next time.
wonderful you could join us again.
Cheers. Bye.
Sid, what are you sitting on?
Sorry?
What are you sitting on? Is it some sort of bouncy ball or what?
I'll show it to you.
Yeah.
apparently it's good for my back and good for my posture. But I should remember that I keep bouncing around, is it?
You do.
I feel like the Energizer Bunny now then.
You do. How about you one of the Wiggles?
Fair enough.
All right.
All right. Good night, guys.
Okay, good night.
Well, good night to you too.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.